Cinemajaw is sponsored by Overcast, an independent podcast app that embraces the open world of podcasting instead of locking it down. No exclusives, no premium content, no paywalls. Just a great podcast app for everyone. Get it for free in the App Store. And we thank them for their support. You're listening to Cinemajaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from our respective homes in Chicago. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is
Rye the Movie Guy, and sitting alongside us is Filmy and Phil.
How we doing tonight, guys?
This week on Cinemajaw, Matt, we continue our celebration of horror with our top 5 scariest movies of the 1980s.
Oh, this is of the vintages of horror, Ryan. This is the year. This is the one that you want. You know, like this decade to horror is a very formative decade, an important milestone where things sort of teetered. This is the decade of VHS, man. You know.
Yes, and the decade of the slasher films.
Yeah.
You can make a case that it started to pop up in the 70s, sure, but really the 80s were dominated by the slasher.
Yeah, no, you can definitely say that it began with Halloween, but then, you know, Friday the 13th cracked it wide open. But I'm getting ahead of myself, Ryan.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil our lists, but
these could be on the list.
We know that there's some heavy hitters here, so we did our homework and we dug kind of deep. And again, not necessarily the best horror, but the top 5 scariest horror films in the 1980s. Get thinking of that, Jawheads. Besides that, we have more going on, don't we, Phil?
Oh, you know it. We always do. We're keeping up with Wes Anderson month, so we got a new clip and we got a new fact.
And we have 2 reviews for you this week, Jawheads. The new Michael Meyers movie, Halloween Kills, as well as the new creature feature, Antlers.
I saw Halloween Kills, so we'll be talking about that, but I have not seen Antlers. I'm very excited to hear what you thought, Matt Kay.
Do you know the difference between deer nuts and beer nuts?
Antlers?
Something like that, yeah. So the dad joke was about to follow, so I'll just leave it alone.
Just leave it right there, Matt Kay.
Yeah, it's better. Better left unsaid.
We have no guest this week, so that's when we like to stump the Kubinski, our Matt Kay. 5 questions. In honor of Halloween Kills, we will be playing Halloween Cast Trivia.
Okay. If I get 3 right, you have not stumped me. Technically, right. If I get 1 right, you haven't, but I'll go 3. And if I get all 5 correct, Ryan, you have to buy me a beer the next time we go out. First round's on you.
Deal.
Okay.
We were talking about Fantastic Mr. Fox, and everybody on the show said that they weren't a huge fan of Isle of Dogs. I threw a poll question out onto Instagram asking Jawheads what their favorite stop motion animated film by Wes Anderson is, Isle of Dogs or Fantastic Mr. Fox. I knew Fantastic Mr. Fox would win. I was just interested to see by how much, what that margin would be.
Yeah.
What do you think? Because I got the results right in front of me here, Matt Kay.
I'm a big fan of the 80-20 rule. So I'm gonna go ahead and say 80% Mr. Fox and 20% Isle of Dogs.
Phil, does that sound right to you?
I was going to say 85-15, just because I think 20 is maybe
it might be
a little
generous.
Disrespectful to Mr. Fox. Yeah. That's a really good movie, man.
It is.
As of this recording, Fantastic Mr. Fox receiving 71% of the vote, mm-hmm. and Isle of Dogs receiving 29% of the votes.
Isle of Dogs isn't trash, and I'm not trying to say it's trash, but it's nothing compared to Mr. Fox. It's not even close. But hey, some people prefer it, Ryan, you know?
The best thing about Isle of Dogs is, I don't know if you guys remember this, there's like a little shirtless kid banging a drum who looks literally like me.
Yes.
We'll put a picture of it.
We got to post that. We got to repost that picture. Everybody, Jawheads, go to the show notes. I will post that photo of Phil at the bottom. The likeness is uncanny.
I'm still waiting on the royalties. Wes hasn't emailed me back. You can't just use the likeness of any little Japanese boy you want, Wes. We demand justice.
You have lost quite a bit of weight since then. That was pudgy Phil.
It was funny because Phil dressed as the character as well. I love that photo of Phil. It's great.
I forgot all about that. That is an amazing picture.
It is. Speaking of Wes Anderson, let's start this podcast right there.
Yes, the Darjeeling Limited. I think during previous conversations, we've all kind of talked about how it's maybe bottom tier Wes Anderson, but it does have some cool factoids about it. All of the train films in that movie, it's a movie about trains, so this is a lot of them, were all shot inside of an actual real-life moving train. It was traveling from Jodhpur to Jaisalmer through the desert in India. And because it was a moving train, trains are rickety, there was nothing that they could do to like hook any lighting equipment or filming equipment up to the ceilings. Everything had to be within a meter out of the windows, right? They couldn't get that close either because that would be... I'm sure there's tunnels and stuff. Yeah, just a regular, any kind of hazard. A bird could run into it. And so Wes Anderson and the production designer Mark Friedberg went to the Northwestern Railways Company, begging them if they could get 10 rail cars and a locomotive for this film that they would 100% redo over to be like what they needed.
Darjeeling Limited, yeah.
Yeah. And actually use it on their railway, and through what I'm sure was some pretty intense negotiating and spending an absorbent amount of money, they eventually got it. They were granted to do this. Now every time I take the train, right, my blue line's running 10, 20 minutes late. I'm wondering, is Wes at it again?
And this was early in his career too, which makes it all the more impressive. You know, he didn't have that name that he has today.
Yeah, he was growing at that point, but I will say the important thing to all of Wes Anderson's movies is that attention to detail, right? He is just meticulous on everything. So if it wasn't going to look authentic and actually be a train in India when the movie is based on the whole setting as being on this train going across India, I don't think Wes would have wanted to do it any other way. So it was probably a make or break moment. You know, we're either going to make this movie this way or we're just not going to make the film.
I agree. That's exactly that conversation happened, Ryan.
Well, there are no trains in a Michael Myers movie, especially this Halloween Kills movie, Matt. But much like Michael Myers himself, there is no killing the Halloween series. You could take all the films and blow them up, burn them, shoot them, lock them in a safe, and throw them in the ocean, and it doesn't matter. They will keep coming to theaters if you like it or not. Last time we saw The Masked Serial Killer was in 2018. At the end of that film, Laurie Strode, along with her daughter and granddaughter, seemed to have finally won. They trapped Michael Myers in a basement and blew up the house he was in. Not so fast. Michael Myers is back, this time in a film called Halloween Kills.
We killed Michael.
My grandmother set the fire.
No one told you.
Told me what?
Michael Myers is alive.
A man couldn't have survived that fire. "40 years ago, the boogeyman came for us. We are the survivors of Michael Myers.
Laurie, what do we do?
We fight.
Mom,
Our family will kill him.
we're gonna hunt him down and we're gonna put an end to this. He is not gonna stop killing until we stop him.
If you track Michael's victims, that's a straight line to Michael's childhood home. Someone's in our house.
When you're on the 12th movie in a film franchise about a masked killer, your expectations might not be that high. However, the last installment, directed by David Gordon Green, who also directs this latest chapter, and starring Jamie Lee Curtis, was actually a decent effort. I myself was not the biggest fan, but I could appreciate what they were able to pull off. They seemed to get the momentum back, and more importantly, some goodwill from the fans of the franchise. Halloween Kills erases all that. The film actually opens with huge potential. We get a flashback to 1978 when Michael Myers was on his original killing spree. We get a perspective of police officers trying to track him down, and also some trick-or-treaters who were roaming the neighborhood ignorant of what was taking place. One of the officers is played by Jim Cummings, best known for the movies Thunder Road and The Wolf of Snow Hollow. I love this guy. We have not talked about him enough on Cinemajaw. I love Jim Cummings. So when I saw him on screen, I sat up in my seat. Well, after the opening sequence, it is all downhill from there, folks. Back to modern day, the story picks up moments after the 2018 film. Spoiler, Michael Myers is able to escape the burning house. He makes his way back to his childhood home in Haddonfield, Illinois. Meanwhile, Laurie is rushed to the hospital, and when the townfolk hear that Michael is still alive, they all make a creed. Evil will die tonight. A mob mentality forms, which does not fit the themes and or style of the previous slasher films. It also completely breaks the momentum we had going between the Strode women versus Michael Myers. The Strodes, Laurie, daughter, and granddaughter, are barely used here. We do get some fun, gruesome death scenes, but nothing matches the tension we got in the 2018 bathroom scene. I am no Halloween expert by any means, but this was the worst one I have actually seen. I will say it was fun to see a horror film in the theater again, as I love when the crowd screams. And we'll get to a couple of highlights. There were some. But Matt, I want to know, were you disappointed with Halloween Kills?
Was I disappointed? Not entirely. Not entirely, which is also kind of a yes. But I had extremely low expectations. There has never, to this day, been a good Halloween sequel. There have been good reboots, pretty darn good reboots. I'm a fan of the Rob Zombie reboot. But every single sequel is just diminishing returns, with very few exceptions. There have been some sequels that you could almost call like a soft reboot, you know, like a Jason Lives kind of thing, where they change in tone and they try something new. Those have been the better entries. But whenever it's a continuation of the story in the last movie, they have sucked. It's almost like every other Bond movie. It's like a rule for, or every other Star Trek movie. It's like a rule for the Michael Myers films. That being said, I love Michael Myers. He is my favorite slasher. You can keep your Freddys, you can keep your Jasons, you can even keep your Chuckies. I'm a Michael Myers guy. He's the scariest, period, full stop. He's the scariest. They use him so effectively. In fact, probably the highlight of the movie is just how scary Michael Myers himself still is to this day. And all the trappings of the Halloween movie franchise, that Dayglow orange title sequence that everybody has aped, from Stranger Things, and John Carpenter's music, the pumpkin on fire in the beginning. It's all there, and it's all glorious, and it all makes me feel really wonderful to see. But this movie is stupid. It's just like a slap in the face, insult to intelligence. And I'm going to start right here with the stupidest thing that I noticed, okay? In Halloween, the one that came out in 2018, which I believe was just called Halloween, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Laurie Strode, Jamie Lee Curtis, is a social pariah. Everybody in town talks about her like she's the crazy old lady up on the hill. And then in the first scene of Halloween Kills, which is taking place on the same freaking day, it's not like years have passed. It's the same day. They're like doing shots about her in the bar, like she's a hero, she's a survivor of Michael Myers. Like all of a sudden, everybody in town knows her and likes her and respects her, and nobody thinks she's a crackpot. What happened to all that? Just out the window with that. Didn't happen. Doesn't matter. Just completely retconned. Like they think, oh, well, that was 2 years ago. Nobody remembers. I remember. That pissed me off. It was stupid. There's no plot. There's no plot whatsoever. It's just Michael Myers going from kill to kill to kill. Sooner or later, they're going to catch up and have a fight.
Laurie is the character is almost not even in the movie. And that's not, right. I'm not actually trying to like shock you here and say something untrue. She is literally in this movie for, what would you say, total screen time? 10 minutes?
Sure. And it's not that she's not in the movie. It's even when she is in the movie, she doesn't do anything. She's literally in a hospital bed.
It's ridiculous.
She gets up at one point to go try to fight, like have her big moment. Nope, that doesn't go so well. Right back to the hospital bed.
Why? It's terrible. Okay, so you would actually, I said to you, we sat next to each other at the screening, and after it ended, we don't like to discuss too much, but I turned and I said how out of place this mob mentality was. And this is clearly what they were trying to go for this. There's no doubt they're drawing parallels into the current political
the January 6th. Yeah.
Right. So they're trying to draw into make it a nice parallel here. It does not fit into the Halloween movies that we have seen as of late, or maybe ever. I don't know why they went with this idea. Here it was the Strode women. Okay, well, but at least as far as this storyline goes, with the Strode women trying to turn the tables and actually attack Michael Myers, worked. That was an interesting twist on the whole series, and it made the 2018 film solid. Right? We like that.
Totally.
What happened? Why abandon that whole entire idea? I mean, all of a sudden,
I don't know.
The Strode women are not even involved in trying to get to Michael Myers. Now it's the town people that have gone absolutely insane on making sure that they kill Michael Myers. I hated it.
I got to say, first of all, I actually enjoyed the mob sequence. I thought that it was probably the most effective sequence in terms of horror in the whole movie. The whole thing where the guy jumps to, I don't want to spoil anything. So I disagree with you on that. I don't think necessarily it was tried to shoehorn. I do agree that they screwed up taking the Strode women out of the picture for some strange reason. And the mob thing wasn't explored deeply enough to make it a truly effective subtext. It was there. It was a great sequence. And then it doesn't really amount to anything, but I got to say, like, when those images were on the screen, I was like, oh, damn, they went there. It's bold.
Well, I didn't really care for it at all. And the other thing, and this is not a spoiler at this point, if anybody just pulled up IMDb, there's already another Halloween film scheduled for next
it's a trilogy.
Year.
Yeah.
I did not know this going in, but it's so set up that there's no gratifying ending at all. Zero. Where the 2018 film, technically, if it had ended there and they didn't make another one, we had a nice conclusion. This, I mean, the ending was like, are you joking me? This is the ending of the film. Well, it's basically a commercial for the next one.
No, almost literally. Almost literally, it's "Are you joking me?" Because you could look at that ending in two different ways. No spoilers here, but there's a sequence that happens. And then there's another sequence that happens, and it's almost the mirror image of the first sequence. Did that really happen? Because if so, if that's supposed to be canon and not some kind of like imagination kind of thing, that is the stupidest thing ever, because there's this big scene of violence happening supposedly meters away from where the Strode women are sitting with police officers tending to their wounds and stuff. So big stupid. And another thing I want to talk about really quick. I don't want to beat this up too much, but Michael Myers himself functions best when he is closer to human than when he is closer to superhuman, unstoppable killing machine. When
100%.
When we believe he is a man, but what is wrong with him? What keeps him going? How can he take so much punishment and keep going? But, he's just that crazy. He's scarier. But when he's just a ghost that can't be killed or supernatural entity, it's like, it's just Jason in a different mask. That's dumb. Like, I liked the first movie so much because we see Michael in the mental institution without his mask, and it was humanizing. And that's also what I think the Rob Zombie movies did so well.
So speaking of the mask and without him, with mask and without, I don't know what the big deal is about finally seeing his face. I think he's much scarier just leave the mask on. It's not like trying to figure out who Superman is for Lois Lane. Just leave the mask on.
He's not a luchador. Right.
They make this big point of trying to take the mask off and everybody looking at him. We, the viewers, don't get to see his face. Was that effective at all for you? You know the Halloween story much better than I do. But for me, I was like, I literally don't care what he looks like. And I think it's less scary if I was actually going to get a glimpse at his face, because then you realize that he's just an old dude at this point. But the mask, when it's on and it's got, blood splattered on from people that he's killed, that looks way freakier. Just leave the mask on and stop taking it off.
Yeah. No, I agree. Michael Myers is the mask. We do see his face in the original 1978 movie when him and Laurie are struggling in the closet and she pokes him in the eye with a coat hanger and then grabs the mask. So it's not without precedent in the series that the demasking of him is something that happens in a lot of the movies. One last sequence I want to mention that was really fun was the trick-or-treaters on the swings. The townsfolk of Haddonfield, they're driving around in roving gangs, if you will, and one truck worth of folks stops because they see some kids on the swings. They're like, what are you kids doing out here? Don't you know there's a madman loose? Get out of here. And they're like, no, nothing's going on except for that weird guy behind those trees. He's like playing peekaboo with us. He's wearing a white mask. Oh, look, there he is. Awesome sequence.
That was great. But I mean, for sequences that get you tense, like I mentioned, the bathroom scene in the 2018 film with the podcasters in the beginning, that really worked on a horror level. There was none of that where it there's some good kills in here, but I love those like tense moments where it's sort of a cat and mouse game, be it in like a bathroom or a house or a car. Those are the best moments in a horror film like this. And we just didn't get any of those in here.
No. And the kills are kind of campy and played for laughs a little bit. I mean, they're gory and gruesome, but like, I don't want to get, again, I'm trying not to spoil things, but let's just say it's, probably not outside of the realm of imagination that somebody turns into a pincushion. And we get to see it happen kind of slowly. And that was funny. I'm sorry. Like after the third knife goes in, I was kind of laughing,
Yeah. How about a jaw-dropping moment here, Matt?
My jaw-dropping moment was the head in the banister. Again, I can't describe too much without spoiling anything.
I think that describes quite a bit when you say the head in the banister.
No. Believe me, that does not prepare you for what you're about to witness, because I was like, oh my God, man, it was brutality.
So I went with Death by Fluorescent Light.
That was another good one. Yeah.
This one I'll just spoil because it's not that bad, but he basically takes a fluorescent light out. And slowly. Again, this is what I mean about, what I love about seeing the movie in a crowd is as he takes that fluorescent light out, the crowd is already sort of like hooting and hollering kind of moment. Like, what's he going to do with this thing? I mean, we know what he's going to do, but then he breaks it in half so that it's got the shards and then he just jabs that into somebody and it's like shocking. But again, people were almost applauding because it was a cool kill, right?
Right. I think that's the fun. This was like going to a good haunted house, basically. It can't be.
If I went to this haunted house and I paid for it, I would have wanted my money back.
No. Tomato. I had fun with this movie, but it is not one of the better Halloween movies. I do recommend this spooky season. If you're going to go see a movie in the theater, you could do a lot worse than Halloween Kills.
You got a movie poster quote?
Yeah, Halloween Kills lives up to its title, but not the glory of Michael Myers' legend.
I went with, please stick a knife in the series.
Hey, real quick before we get to Jaws, did you happen to, and we can't divulge too much of this, but did you happen to notice which character it was at the end of the movie looking out the window? Did you understand who that was?
No.
Okay.
I thought it was, we'll talk about it after, but I thought it was one of the...
We'll throw a quick spoiler lounge after the credits.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was already like rolling my eyes at that point. Like, all right, what time am I going to get home? I need to eat a small snack before dinner. That's what I was thinking about at the end.
Some nice fan service there at the very end. How many Jaws?
How many Jaws? I'm going 1.5 Jaws for Halloween Kills.
I went and gave it that half extra jaw, so two for me. It was fun.
Not too strong. Yeah. I do like it was a little chilly. It was a brisk night, if you will. And I loved my bike ride home from the theater because even though I wasn't that scared, there is something about then going home. I was like looking over my shoulder.
Yeah, me too.
Cold out. It was enjoyable, you know.
I took the CTA when I got home.
Right. And I texted you, hey, be careful on that CTA. So a little fun there. All right. Jawheads, Halloween Kills is playing in theaters. And how about this, Matt? Streaming free on Peacock. So you can check it out at home or in theaters. I would recommend, if you can do it safely, get out to the movie theater because it was probably the best part was being part of a crowd watching 100%.
100%. Yeah. So, go see this in the theater if you're able.
Yep. And once you do, let us know what you think. Shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw or email feedback@cinemajaw.com. Last week on the show, we did our top 5 scariest films in the 1970s. As we promised, this week, we move on to the 1980s. Matt, you're getting us started this week.
Does that
Easy
mean
list for you to come up with?
No, because it's a very difficult list for me to narrow down. And I also want to say at the top for Jawheads, we tried to dig a little deeper. So there's going to be some like obvious movies that don't appear, at least on my list. And we're going to toss those in as honorable winners. They would be our number ones, but we're trying to dig deep. Speaking of digging deep, Rye, at number 5, I have Cannibal Holocaust.
With a name like that, it's got to be good. I have never seen it.
It is so good that the filmmakers were arrested when they traveled to, I think, Italy.
Because this is the one where they thought it was real.
They thought it was a snuff film. What's also noteworthy about Cannibal Holocaust is that it was one of the first found footage movies. And this came out in 1980. It's almost really, it feels like a 70s holdover. In all honesty, it was probably shot in the very late 70s, 79. But it did come out in 80. So it counts. This is one of the movies that like I got dared to see. And just because of that title, you get kind of scared. It's not as bad as all that, but you know, it'll pop up on like some of the most disturbing lists or most gory lists. It's pretty sick. You know, definitely like a Green Inferno predecessor.
Another one I have not seen.
Oof. Yikes. No need.
My number 5 film, I know by today's standards, if I watched it, I want to put this out there. If I watched it today, I wouldn't be scared. I'd probably be laughing throughout the whole thing, but I'd enjoy the movie. However, when I saw this, I remember my dad showed it to me because I think he probably thought, well, this is so goofy. Even though he's really young, he'll enjoy it, but it still scared the hell out of me. It's a Stephen King, based off of Stephen King. We'll probably have a couple of these on our list. Came out in 1983. It has a horror master directing the movie. Yeah. John Carpenter directed it. I'm going with Christine at my number 5.
Not the 83 King movie I was thinking of. Christine, no. Huh?
Yeah, Christine. This is the film about a killer car. Right. It is a 1958 Plymouth Fury named Christine. And basically the car takes on a life of its own and gets jealous. And the owner, Arnie, it has some issues and it goes after all these people who had bullied Arnie. And
he looks a lot like that Melon kid.
Yeah. when you're talking about a car that's possessed and the way it's actually going to kill people, like I said, if you were watching it today, you'd probably get a laugh out of it. But at the time, being a little kid, I actually was very scared of just getting in a car by myself after seeing Christine. Really did a number on me.
Interesting.
Did you see this when you were a kid?
I did. And a car coming to life and killing people never, ever scared me. Never.
Oh, I was terrified.
As cool as I think Christine is, and I have subsequently read the book, took me years, very recently read it, like 5 years ago, maybe. The book is way better. The movie was okay, but it's always nice to see that actor. I forget his name. He went on to become a director too.
Can we throw it in the fish tank?
famously from Back to School. It's probably his biggest movie. Yeah, I like it. I like Christine. It's a good movie. Not where I thought you were going.
Well, it made the Plymouth Fury. It's a red and white Plymouth Fury. It made it sort of iconic.
A staple of Halloween parades all over the country, folks.
There's no doubt about it. My number 5, Christine. What do you got sitting at format?
All right. Another one that I think got to me because it was so relatable. In 1987, I was 10 years old and I was going on a lot of sleepovers, like really as many weekends as I could convince my parents to either let me go sleep over at a friend's house or let a friend sleep over at my house. That was the most fun thing you could do with your weekend when you were 10 years old in the small town that I grew up in. And I had this one friend who had the best taste in movies, Ryan. You would appreciate this kid. You would have approved of this kid. His house is where I saw Ghostbusters, Goonies, other movies that might pop up on this list, so I won't mention, that also came out in the 80s. And one of the ones he showed me was The Gate, which is about a sleepover gone wrong when one of the kids who's into D&D, again, not so far-fetched in my group of friends, accidentally conjures up a real demon and things start to just go haywire in the house. To, you know, little by little, these like imps start showing up. At first, it's just small mischief, and then people start to die, disappear, get disfigured. There's all kinds of weird scares. And finally, the kid's alone. His sister and his friend have been taken by the demons, and he has to fight this giant demon by himself. The effects, the stop motion effects, actually pretty good. I think they're, you know, a little dated perhaps, but it's a soft spot in my heart. And this movie scared the crap out of me because I could imagine myself in the situation.
And what year did you say this came out?
1987, The Gate.
Wow.
You have never seen it?
No, I don't even know if I've heard of it, to be absolutely honest.
Stephen Dorff, a young Stephen Dorff is.
Oh, Stephen Dorff's in this.
Yeah. So there you go. Stephen Dorff. I'm in.
Interesting. All right. At my number 4, this is a wild card pick here, Matt, for me, because this is not a horror film. It's a thriller, but we're talking scary movies, and this is a different type of scare. Came out in 1987, starring Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. Fatal Attraction.
I'll tip my hat to that one. I mean, it's a little out of bounds, but we'll allow it.
Okay, you like to go a little out of bounds on a lot of top 5s, so allow me on this one. This is
fine.
My non-traditional horror.
If I was you, pick. I'd be like, no, bullshit. This is bullshit. It's a bullshit pick.
But if for those who haven't seen it, Michael Douglas has an affair with Glenn Close's character when his wife is out of town, and he thinks that's it. It's done. That's the end of it. But little does he know that Glenn Close is not going to let it just end, and she becomes a stalker of his. And I think watching it, it's more of a psychological horror that she's coming to the house and gets to know his family. There are 2 parts that really freak me out, really 3 before we get to the bathroom scene. But prior to that is they have an open house where Michael Douglas's wife is trying to sell the place that they're currently living in. And Glenn Close shows up and starts talking to his wife like she's interested in buying the place. And it's like that moment where everything gets way too close. And Michael Douglas comes there and he realizes like, oh my God, she's in on everything. You know what I mean? She's talking to my wife and it weird stuff is happening. Then there's also the dead rabbits.
Yeah.
Because Michael Douglas's daughter in the movie has rabbits. They end up dead. It's very freaky. And then of course the classic bathroom scene where Glenn Close, we think is dead, drowned in a bathtub, comes back to life, swinging a knife. Scary as hell, to be absolutely honest. Still to this day, it's a good one.
No doubt. No doubt. I mean, it scared the crap out of me. I saw it way too young. Anything we saw in the 80s, we can just blanket statement say we saw it when we were way too young.
We saw it too young. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Swinging it back over to me. Hey, you know what? I forgot a fish tank question for you, Phil, because I really wanted to know how many Halloween movies was Jamie Lee Curtis in? My guess is 5. Maybe, 6 now, including this new one. All right, but back to the list. My number 3 is an absolute classic. Some people consider it a Christmas movie. I think that's fair. The Gremlins.
Nice. That was a very, very scary movie.
Scared
back
the
in the day.
crap out of me. And I think the reason is you don't expect it to be as brutal as it is. Phoebe Cates had done like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and everyone in the movie, you just think, oh, this is going to be a comedy. Howie Mandel is in the cast, for God's sake. And the brutality, especially like when the Gremlins finally attack and they're killing people, it's pretty sick. Like they get in some pretty creative kills, and they're just so happy and gleeful about the mayhem and death that they cause. I love it. I love the Gremlins. There was also like a bit of a punk rock edge to that movie too. Got to rewatch it. It's been a long time.
I think the marketing of that movie too was to make it
Kid-friendly.
Kid-friendly and not so terrifying. And a lot of parents probably brought kids to the theater or rented the movie on VHS. And when you finally saw this movie, it was not necessarily all Gizmo driving around in a little Barbie car. Sure, that was in the commercials, but we didn't see the evil Gremlins, in microwaves and all hell breaking loose.
Right. And of course, famously, Gremlins would go on to give us Leonardo DiCaprio by way of, what was it, Ghoulies 2? What was he in?
Critters.
There was this glut of Gremlin wannabe movies. Critters, Ghoulies. There's probably like 5 others, like these little creatures, goblins, whatever,
It was a big hit.
Big hit.
My number 3 pick. Last week on the show, I talked about the Amityville Horror being the scariest movie I'd seen because of the age I was at. This one also right up there because it just terrified me. And being in Illinois, Midwest, there's a lot of corn. And so once you travel outside of where we're at here in Chicago and you get a little bit out of the city life, it's cornfields like you wouldn't believe. And when I saw the 1984 film, this is my second movie based on a Stephen King story. The film is called Children of the Corn. It scared the absolute hell out of me. And
He Who Lives Behind the Rose.
Yes, the story is this. If you haven't seen it, it's like a small town. I believe it's in Nebraska, and in the very beginning, the kids actually kill all the adults, and
it's a good scene.
Oh yeah, it's crazy. And then basically it jumps to 3 years later, and we have a couple. One of them is Linda Hamilton, is the woman. For those wondering if Linda Hamilton did anything besides the Terminator movies, she was
in Beauty and the Beast with Ron Perlman, dude. Come on.
Well, yeah, of course. But her and I think it's her boyfriend, maybe husband at the time, are going through this town. And they hit a kid. They actually think they killed this kid, but it turns out that he was already dead. And now their car is out of gas and they need gasoline. And they go to this one adult who is alive in the town. And that's because these kids,
they need a stooge.
Yeah, they left him alive. And the leader of these kids is called Malachi, which is one of the scariest names, maybe only because I know of this movie, but I still think when I hear that name, it just freaks me out. Malachi is such a crazy name.
Yeah, and up there with Hezekiah.
They end up getting a hold of Linda Hamilton, and they take her out into the cornfields. This movie just freaked the hell out of me. It's very scary. And Malachi is actually the guy who would later show up as the son in The Burbs. If you guys know the movie, the Kopecks, who are the next door neighbors, the son in that one is actually Malachi as a kid. He's got red hair, just a creepy looking individual, even when he got older in The Burbs, but in
Perhaps
Children
more
of the Corn,
so.
Yeah, he got creepier. But even in Children of the Corn, he just had a weird, distinctive look about him. This movie always gets to me. I've seen it twice, both times. Oh, give me the willies.
There's a lot going on as far as fears go. Okay, because
cults, right?
Right. Cults, religious cults. You got like people from the city going to rural areas. Yeah. The rural areas are creepy.
Right.
To
100%.
to us city folk anyway, you know. I'm sure it's the other way around, and I know it is. For you're always just afraid. Plus the unknown, like what is behind the rows of corn. Have you ever been in a corn maze? They're kind of intimidating because you can't see through them. You don't know where you are. It's scary. Cornfields.
100%. Yeah, I was actually at one. This is as an adult, maybe it was like 9 years ago. Went for fun, went into the corn maze. Couldn't get out. And then it just started getting frustrating, and it got to that point where we're arguing this way, that way, back around, like we've been here before. And it starts to get like, you could see where things could go awry,
Yeah. Sooner or later, you just start cutting through the corn, right? I mean,
well, yeah, eventually we just were like, just go this way until we just run into something, but it was very frustrating. So yeah, the unknown, everything. There's a lot going on in Children of the Corn.
I agree. All right. Into our number 2s we go. And here come the heavy hitters. I'm going with Wes Craven, 1984, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy freaking Krueger. And listen, everything I said earlier about Michael Myers being my favorite, it's true. But Freddy has one thing going for him. He can get you in your dreams. And I don't know anybody. I've literally never met anybody in America who grew up in the 80s who hasn't had a Freddy Krueger nightmare where he was chasing you in your dreams. Have you had that dream, Rye, at one point in your life?
I don't think I had one, to be honest.
Really? Okay, you're the first person I met because I've had a Freddy Krueger dream where I was like running through peanut butter and Freddy Krueger was behind me. I also had a Freddy Krueger fascination.
What kind of peanut butter? What kind of peanut butter? Like
I think it was chunky. I can't really remember. I had the glove, a toy one, a plastic one. Can you believe that they sold this to children? Like it
was crazy,
right? And I dressed up as him for Halloween. Made my face look all burned and scarred. There was a time. There was a 900 number. Do you remember the 900 number days? Like back before like the internet and stuff. When if you wanted some entertainment, there were 900 numbers that weren't like the sex numbers that you could call. And one of them was like a Freddy Krueger hotline. So I would call Freddy Krueger's hotline and there'd just be like spooky stories told in Freddy's voice. Piss my parents off.
The entertainment of the 80s and early 90s, Matt. Don't you miss it?
But I saw Freddy Nightmare on Elm Street in the theater and I was 10 in 87. So how old was I in 84, dude? I was like 7.
Wow. Boy, he's got to do the math here.
Please edit that to make it sound faster, Phil. So, dude, my uncle took me, and he doesn't have any kids of his own. So he didn't know. And we was with my older brother and they wanted to see Nightmare on Elm Street. So that's what we were going to see. And boy, oh boy, did that one do a number on me, man. I didn't sleep for like 2 weeks. And an obsession was born.
And my funny story about the Nightmare on Elm Street actually is not from when I was a kid and I saw it whenever that was, on VHS, but I watched it maybe about, 7-8 years ago as an adult. And I finished watching it and it was still a little freaked out, but it was my first revisit in a long time. And then as I was walking in my condo to my back door, the doorknob started moving on the back of my doorknob. Someone was trying to open my back door right as I was walking by after literally just stopping the movie. You know how freaked out I was? And it turns out it was the police. It was the police. This was during the day. And it was the police because the next door neighbor had called and there was some guy like going through the backyards. And so they were doing like door checks.
Jesus, why wouldn't they knock?
I don't know what was going on. And the timing of it was just literally incredible. Like stop the movie, walk down my hallway, and my back door is trying to be opened. I was so freaked out.
Did you? So you went toward it? You did the horror movie thing?
No, I didn't go and get it. No, I did not. Because my condo. I can then actually
got like a long hallway.
Well, yeah, and then I can actually go into my master bedroom, which looks out onto like the deck in that area. So I didn't open the back door right away. I didn't know what was going on. And so I went in there and I tried to peer through my curtains. And then I saw like a police officer on my back steps. I'm like, what is going on? Then I went out there to see what, the fuss was going.
Creepy.
Turned out they were just checking doorknobs. Very strange.
I think I remember you telling me that story when it happened, dude.
Yeah. All right. On to my number 2. 1987, finally caught up with this one, Matt, and it's an absolute classic. it gave us the line that you've heard here on Cinemajaw numerous times. Before we had the fish tank, we had the jaw box, and you would hear, "What's your pleasure, Mr. Cotton?" The box. I'm going with Hellraiser as my number 2 pick here, Matt.
Gorgeous
Frank
pick.
Cotton.
Gorgeous.
Yes, Frank Cotton is the character's name, who buys a puzzle box from this weird dealer. And basically, once he solves this puzzle or plays around with it, I don't even know if he technically solves the puzzle. Nobody knows exactly what happens, but he moves this thing around. And next thing you know, we get these like robed figures that are scary as hell. And they basically dismantle people. They put hooks into skin and they can rip skin apart. And poor
the
Frank,
Cenobites. The Cenobites.
Yes, the Cenobites is the technical name for him. Poor Frank is killed off. But then a few years later, his brother and wife move into the house where he was killed, and some blood gets on the attic floor. And somehow this actually starts to recreate Frank's body. And so he's basically like a shell of a man. And
literally.
he needs, exactly, literally.
Like skinless.
He needs his brother's wife, who he had an affair with earlier, to basically bring people back into the attic and kill them so that he can get their blood and their whatever it is to
absorb their life force. Yeah.
Yeah. To grow into a full human again. Very weird premise, but creepy visuals all the way around. The skin and the way the hooks actually go into the skin and pull it apart. Yuck. That's all I'm saying, Matt. It was like, I know this is 1987.
When did you first see this? Yeah, you just watched it, right? For the first time?
Yeah, a week ago.
Pinhead.
I had to look away. I had to look away from the screen 2 or 3 different times. And this is 1987 effects. I was just so grossed out by what I was looking at. I turned away.
It's an effective movie, man. There's a reason why, Elias chose that clip. This is an absolute classic. Definitely one of the high watermarks for gore and horror in general, frankly. It's sequels I cannot speak as highly of. Some of them were funnier than others, but the original Hellraiser is a gem.
And it goes to show you that sometimes less is more when it comes to the villain. And Pinhead is exactly that. He's not used very much in the original here. In later, he's the face of the franchise. But in this one, he's really a minor role. But it works much better when it's a smaller part. Nobody knows what the hell is going on. He's got that weird voice. It looks crazy with all the damn pins in his head. Leave it at that. It worked much better.
What does he say too?
We have such sights to show you.
The line they stole in Event Horizon. All right, here we are. Cinemajaw, 80s horror, our number ones. And I'm going with David Cronenberg, 1986, Jeff Goldblum, Gina Davis, The Fly.
Nice. That's a good number one, Matt.
Probably the best body horror movie of all time, really. When the Brundlefly finally comes to fruition and he's done with being human. You know what scene really got me the most is when he keeps taking the shotgun and putting it back to his head, and she can't pull the trigger. Oh man, it's devastating. The Fly is such a classic, from the 50s with Vincent Price, and nobody had much faith in this modernization of it. And boy, did it blow the original completely out of the water. I mean, it's like night and day. The Fly is amazing. I could rewatch it today and love it just as much. Did I mention Jeff Goldblum?
Oh, in his signature role, Matt.
Yeah.
It's that and Jurassic Park. Those are the 1-2s, right? Those are your Goldblums.
Yeah, he's had a lot of good ones, but those I would agree, probably his biggest ones, no doubt.
My number one, also much talked about, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on it, but it is a movie I only partially saw as a kid because I was too scared to finish it, and finally did see it last year. 1982, Poltergeist. This is directed, believe it or not, by Tobe Hooper, believe it or not, even though some have said...
Of Texas Chainsaw fame.
Right. But some have said, and people have really looked into this, that Steven Spielberg did technically direct Poltergeist. Through the years, they have looked into this, and Spielberg was in a contract to do E.T., and he could not release another film in 1982. So he got around it, they think, by saying he was just writing and producing Poltergeist. But cast members such as Greg T. Nelson and others have slipped up in interviews through the years and had talked. Sometimes they're saying that, oh, Steven directed me and he said this. And they're like, oh, Steven. And then they'll slip up and say, oh, yeah, he was on set that day. But if you watch Poltergeist, it plays out much more like a Steven Spielberg film than it does the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So
agree.
Who knows? But yes, very iconic moment when she puts her hands up onto the TV screen and says they're here. But if you're talking freaky, you got the clown attack.
The clown attack is good.
It is very good. And then also the very end of the movie where we realize that this house has been built on top of the graveyard and you have all these bodies.
The corpses rise.
And corpses rising. That entire ending of the film is just
the pool sequence.
Brilliant. Absolutely.
One scene in particular that you and I have both discussed having to close our eyes when we were kids is when the guy's face falls off in the bathroom.
Oh, yeah. It's a quick scene, but it is, yes.
I rewatched it. Wait, you only just saw Poltergeist recently?
Yeah, I watched it as a kid, but didn't watch the whole thing because I was too scared. Yeah.
So yeah, that scene is gruesome. But today I've watched it and it's does not hold up. It's pretty laughable.
Right, but it's still a very enjoyable film. If you haven't seen Poltergeist, like I said, I just watched it last year for start to finish for the first time and enjoyed the hell out of it. So
yeah, I can rewatch Poltergeist.
Honorable mentions here.
Oh yeah,
honorable mentions. I know you got a lot. I only have two not mentioned here.
Go ahead. You go
One
first then.
Dead Calm. This was a movie you brought up with Nicole Kidman, Billy Zane out on the boat.
It's a good one.
Creepy because they're all alone and trapped on a boat. I like it. And another John Carpenter classic, The Thing. I thought that would be on your list.
Well, again, I'm trying to not to mention movies like The Thing and The Shining. Even The Fly, I thought, man, really, should I go with The Fly? And I'm like, yeah, I think that's a deep enough cut, just barely a deep enough cut. All right, so I'm going to go really quickly through my list. Friday the 13th should be mentioned, so I've mentioned it. Child's Play, freaky as hell. I mean, who was not afraid of their good guy doll or My Buddy or whatever it was? Started a whole franchise. Society, which is a lesser known film. This is a deep cut. Talk about body horror. It's a teenager from Beverly Hills finds out his rich and privileged parents are part of a sex orgy cult where bodies literally melt into one another. It's pretty weird, Cronenberg-esque. Cujo, that's the Stephen King film I thought you were talking about. Also came out in 83. Scary as hell. Mentioned The Thing, we mentioned Shining. April Fool's Day, 1986. This was one of those VHS Dare movies. If you remember the cover of it, it's like a girl, her braid is in the shape of a noose and she's holding a knife behind her back and she's facing a dinner party of her friends. Do you remember this movie?
Mm-mm.
This movie keeps sort of like faking you out because the premise of the movie is it takes place on April Fool's Day, and they keep doing these pranks where they pretend to be dead and that they like met their gruesome end, but then they actually start to die. So you don't know what murders are real and what aren't. It's kind of interesting. Basket Case we've talked about recently, and Aliens.
Man, game over, man. It's game over.
Sure.
Those are my honorables.
Jawheads, if we missed the scariest movie of the 1980s, in your opinion, shoot us a tweet at Cinemajaw or an email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. We are going to take a break. And when we come back, we have a review of Antlers, plus Stump the Kubinski Halloween cast. Whew, this is going to be fun, Matt. Stick with us.
Sometimes things just work out. Like how Cinemajaw's Wes Anderson month started at the exact same time as the blank is worth it meme began circulating the weeaboo degenerate circles that Phil runs in. Imagine, it's this iconic scene from Isle of Dogs, but instead of a bag of garbage, everybody finds a promiscuous drawing of literally any anime character you can imagine.
Wait a second. Before we attack each other and tear ourselves to shreds like a pack of maniacs, let's just open the sack first and see what's actually in it. It might not even be worth the trouble.
I don't know. What do you think? I'm not sure. Maybe. Hi.
A rancid apple core, 2 worm-eaten banana peels, a moldy rice cake, a dried-up pickle, tin of sardine bones, a pile of broken eggshells, an old smushed-up rotten gizzard with maggots all over it.
Okay, it's worth it.
Hey Jawheads, Phil here. We know it's spooky month, but since it's also Wes Anderson month, we thought we'd give you a few films to celebrate with us. Some of the films that are on subscription streaming services are going to be The Life Aquatic, which is on Amazon Prime and Hoopla. Both Isle of Dogs and Fantastic Mr. Fox are on Disney+. Rushmore is on Hulu and Paramount+, and Moonrise Kingdom can be found on HBO Max.
And we are back on Cinemajaw. Before we get to our review of Antlers and before we stump the Kubinski, which I know we will do, we did throw a few items into the fish tank. Let's talk about scary. Oh, let's open up that fish tank.
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up! Wake up! No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, get some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. It feels great to be out, stretch my bones. I did. I wanted to bring up 2 80s horror films that I'm not sure if many Jawheads have heard of. They're not quite hidden gems, but they're definitely worth watching, and they're not going to come up in most other people's top 5s. Matt, you might heard of this one. It's a trauma movie, and it's not necessarily scary, but it is awesome. Beware Children at Play. It's kind of like Children of the Corn. There's like this cult of cannibal kids. The difference being, right, like there's this rule in cinema where you don't hurt the kids. And like, I mean, it's kind of campy, but at the same time, just like gratuitous violence to children for the sake of breaking that rule.
That sounds very trauma-y.
It's awesome. It's totally awesome. Very like not going to scare you.
Can we go Class of Nukem High as long as we're going trauma?
Yeah, I'm amazed that Matt didn't bring up any.
They're not that scary.
To be fair. Yeah, but they're still horror movies. There's a lot of stuff that's not scary, but
they're
still
more
horror.
like gross out comedy. But anyway, go on.
The other one, which is legitimately scary, it's a Japanese film called
Tetsuo
Sweet
Iron Man?
Home.
Oh yeah, Sweet
I don't
Home.
know. I don't know if Tetsuo is. It's black and white, so I assumed it was like 60s.
No, it's 80s.
I could be entirely wrong on that. Well, then yeah, you could watch that one. Sweet Home is another really, 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 really good one. It's like this haunted mansion. This film crew goes in to like uncover art from this artist's mansion that he died in, and it's really rad.
Sweet
well worth
Home?
to watch. Sweet Home.
I like it.
I could
Writing
not
this one down,
find
Phil.
Beware Children of Play streaming anywhere. There's probably like a Troma's exclusive streaming service. I wouldn't be surprised. But I know for a fact that Sweet Home is available with subtitles on YouTube.
Nice.
Oh, whoops. And I got so carried away, I forgot to even bring up where we have other stuff in here. The first one, who was the actor in Christine? That guy's name, Keith Gordon. He's done a lot in TV after Christine.
He's a director now too, right?
Yes, I was going to say he's done a lot of TV, both in front of and mostly behind the camera. He's directed a lot of shows. Dexter was like a big one. It's weird, right? TV's not like you do the whole series, so there's a whole list of Fargo episodes and House episodes.
That's some big shows.
But yeah,
Sure.
yeah. And he seems to be doing pretty well at it. And then, of course, Matt brought up the melon from Back to School as well.
His definitely his best role.
Then the only other question in here: how many Halloween movies is Jamie Lee Curtis in?
Yes. This
question is, as far as I'm concerned, there's not really one clear-cut answer. Matt says 6. Now, in terms of sequential Laurie Strode appearances. I think technically that is correct. However, there's always a catch. Nothing in this world can be perfect. So the Halloween wiki, which I used to research this, did want to, like, to me was I felt aggressive in stating out the difference between Halloween and then the Halloween extended edition, which did feature extra scenes, which they count as a seventh movie? Appearance. Yes.
No.
Don't listen, man.
That's nonsense.
Refer to the wiki. Refer to the wiki. Now, what I will say, okay, if you don't accept that one, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, which for the record I think is underrated just because people didn't expect it to be what it was.
I agree.
Jamie Lee is in that film as the PA announcer for curfew, but not as Laurie Strode.
But does she? But
appear? That would be.
That's a voiceover.
That would be. She's credited,
but that's not an appearance in the strict sense of the word.
I think in the film sense of the word, I'm pretty sure everyone would acknowledge that counts as an appearance.
If it was a voice performance, I would say okay, maybe. But this is literally just a quick voiceover so she could get some work and keep her name attached to the franchise.
All I'm saying, if we're going by, it depends on. No Ryan, offense, Matt, but I trust the Halloween Wikia more than I trust you on these matters, and they're saying 8.
Ryan, you got to mediate.
So here's what's funny: is the first question in Stump the Kubinski tonight was supposed to be, how many movies has Jamie Lee Curtis appeared in the Halloween franchise?
And what number did you have written down?
When you asked the question, I was stunned. So during the break, I actually had to replace the question, but I wrote down 6. I have you down.
Damn it. I should have not said anything and I would have got one right.
Should have. Was that everything, Phil?
That's all we got in here.
All right. Jump back in that fish tank.
You bet.
Ryan, director Scott Cooper, who gave us Crazy Heart, Black Mass, and Hostels, along with Guillermo del Toro, whose credits I need not evoke, give us a Pacific Northwestern monster movie just in time for Halloween. Throw in a healthy dose of subtext, and we could have a horror hit on our hands here, folks. But does this Wendigo have horns, or is it just Wendigon? I headed up to Oregon to find out.
What's going on?
We found a part of a man in the woods today.
Part of the man?
I guess the other half was found in the mine. Oh, this has got to be an animal, right?
No animal that I've ever seen.
The story of the Wendigo, Ryan, is a tale about the points at which two cultures touch, the Native American and the white Canadian trappers. Each culture had a slightly different take on the creature, and what makes it so fascinating is that to this day, if you look this up on Wikipedia, there's an air of credibility that makes the tall tale so compelling. The story of Antlers harnesses that dreadful spirit of the legend in a humorless, bleak, and heartbreaking way. Julia, played by Kerry Russell, is a teacher in a small town in Oregon plagued by the opioid crisis. She has recently moved in with her brother, Paul, played by Jesse Plemons, who has reluctantly become the town's sheriff recently. They both harbor past trauma and suffered abuse at the hands of their father. More on that in a bit. Julia is trying to connect with her 12-year-old students and focuses in on a quiet boy named Lucas. Lucas draws disturbing pictures in class and has the telltale signs of abuse that Julia knows all too well. But when she goes to the house to investigate the truth, what she finds is more than she can imagine. Lucas is the caretaker of a supernatural creature, and when that creature is set free, no one is safe. Let's delve right into the not-so-subtle subtext here, Ryan. Antlers is about the cycle of abuse. This is dead serious and at times meditative story about how monsters beget monsters and how difficult that cycle is to break. The problem is that it takes itself so damn seriously that there's not an ounce of humor, fun, or any relief from the bleakness. Antlers also touches on addiction, much more subtly than its main theme, but never really develops that side satisfactorily. The setting in the Pacific Northwest is gorgeous, misty, arboreal, dripping, and lush. The camera loves this landscape, and so do we, the viewers. I wanted to hike in those forests, even with the Wendigo on the loose. However, the tone that I mentioned could have used a bit more of the magical realism that Del Toro so often brings that was just missing here. The actors are all fantastic, Kerry Russell in particular, and the two little boys at the heart of the story turned in heartbreaking, if somewhat underused performances. Jesse Plemons continues to rise in my book, and I was fascinated by his character, even though his story is also frustrating. Speaking of frustrating, I got a note that for a Native American legend to be told by mostly white people, save one token Native played by Graham Greene, gave me pause. Perhaps if that were the message here, one of cultural and geographical appropriation and the comeuppance thereof, I could have understood it more, but that is not on the menu. So what is on the menu? A heaping helping of human flesh. This movie has a lot of mutilated corpses and gory attacks. This is the closest thing to a creature feature we've had in a good long while. It honestly reminded me of Pumpkinhead in that way, and which is perhaps the last great entry in that genre outside of Del Toro's canon. In that regard, this movie excels. The creature itself is disgusting and terrifying, and it's on screen just the right amount. This is a heartbreaking, perhaps too serious entry in the creature feature genre. The obvious subtext about cycles of abuse was well crafted. The subtler subtext about addiction, less so. Overall, I enjoyed its atmosphere and monster, but wanted to dab more of that Del Toro magic.
I have to say, you describing this film sounds like I would enjoy it. It seems like a slow burn horror to some degree.
It's not necessarily a slow burn. It does take a couple of scenes to it gets right into it. It was not what I would call a slow burn, but it's definitely a more thoughtful, more artistic monster movie. Certainly, it's one of the more artistic horror movies, I would say.
And Jesse Plemons and Kerry Russell,
they're great.
Both great. So I'm so glad to hear that you think they both poured in great performances here. I think two good actors like this elevate a horror film into something a little bit more.
Yeah, you would like to think that, especially with Del Toro putting his name on this thing. But unfortunately, man, I think you're going to be somewhat disappointed. I think there's like a kernel of something great here, and it's frustrating that it never achieves that greatness. It's by no means bad, but it's missing something I almost can't quite put my finger on. And I think it is like Del Toro needed to step in and add a little bit of magic to this because it's just so damn bleak. And I don't know if that worked for me. Maybe you like it more.
And the child actor does a pretty good job as well.
Yeah, there's two little boys at the center of the story, and I thought that they both, while their stories are very sad, they performed them well. I mean, I was empathetic toward them. I bought it.
Was there a jaw-dropping moment, Matt?
Yes, there was. I will say there's two, really. The shedding of the skin, which I can't really delve into without giving away something. So I'll just leave it right there. The shedding of the skins.
I'm intrigued. I like it.
It was a gross scene. And then
movie poster.
Well, I got one more quick jaw drop. This trope pops up a lot in movies. Children's art that is disturbing, like you see like a ghost drawn behind and the parents are like, "Who's that, honey?" Like, "Oh, it's that guy standing right behind you," Like Babadook is a good example.
I was going to say Babadook, sure.
Yeah, and actually it pops up in like Paranormal Activity and a whole bunch of. It's a trope. Lucas's art was particularly disturbing, and that's hard to do because we've seen so many of these. So that's another jaw-dropping moment. Movie poster quote, Ryan. Just when you thought it was safe to go back into the rural woods of opioid country.
I love that one. Well done, man. How many jaws?
2.5 jaws. I liked it. It definitely is a slight cut above the rest, but it's missing something too. I'm actually really curious to hear your take on this one.
Well, I am going to check it out this weekend for sure. Before we get to Stump the Kubinski, it did remind me, I see a lot of movies that we don't get a chance to ever bring up and talk about on the Jaw. And since it is horror film and you're talking about an art house horror movie with Antlers, there's another one out there. I saw this in the theater. It's now available on digital to rent, and it's entitled The Night House with Rebecca Hall. And she plays the wife of a husband who, right at the beginning of the film, commits suicide. And she's obviously distraught. She's saddened, but can't believe that he just sort of gave up on her, these young couple in love, and this guy just commits suicide. And then the film explores exactly what was going on into his life as she looks into like some of his findings. But it also plays around a little bit with the scary house trope, as you like to say. So you get this a lot of images when she's in the house and she thinks she sees somebody, and this is all in camera, but it'll just be like the way the banister of the stairs looks in the light. So the first time we look at it, it's like, oh my God, there's someone standing there. But then you look again, and it's just like, oh, I see. It's the way the shadows being cast on the wall. They really do a couple of great moments in there, and how this character deals with grief. Great performance by Rebecca Hall. Recommend this one.
Was it like jump scary or
not too much? It's
okay.
More ambiance scare, that creepiness of being in a house all alone, and everybody always wanting to make sure she's okay because her husband had just killed herself, and it's just creepy, out at a lake. So check out The Night House, and I will be checking out Antlers from your review, Matt.
Cool. Can't wait to hear what you think.
All right, brings us to the end of the podcast. We like to play trivia. No guest this week, so we are playing Stump the Kubinski. 5 questions. We stump him if he only gets 2 right.
Number 1, right, the answer to number 1 is 6.
If he gets 3 right, Matt wins. Here we go. The question that I had, it was actually question 1, was how many Halloween films does Jamie Lee Curtis appear in? Matt would have been correct, 6. So during the break, I had to replace this very quickly, and I came up with this, Matt. This is Halloween cast trivia. I came up with this. Jamie Lee Curtis has appeared in 3 films with Dan Aykroyd. Name 2 of them.
Trading Places.
That is 1.
And boy, was she in Nothing But Trouble?
Incorrect.
Christmas with the Cranks, my dude. Different holiday. You're thinking the wrong season.
Also, we would have went with My Girl.
Yeah.
And also technically My Girl 2 both appear in as well. So would have had any one of those. Matt, incorrect on question number 1. We move on to question 2. Question 2 over to you, Matt. Who played Jamie Lee Curtis's daughter in the Freaky Friday remake?
That was I can only think of her nickname, Lilo, right? What's Lindsay Lohan?
That is correct. He is on the board. Question 2, he is correct. On to question 3, Matt, what is the top grossing film of Jamie Lee Curtis's career?
Oh, it's got to be True Lies.
That is correct. Oh my God, he is rolling now. 2 correct. We go on to question 4. We move on to cast member. Believe it or not, we didn't mention him in our review. Anthony Michael Hall.
Oh, wow. How did we miss that?
Is in Halloween Kills. So this question, Matt, Anthony Michael Hall appears in 3 films directed by John Hughes.
Sure.
Directed by John Hughes, not produced, directed by John Hughes. Name 2 of them.
Man, the forcefulness of when you said directed, now I'm really, really scared. 16 Candles.
That is 1.
Breakfast Club.
That is 2. Wow. We did not stump the Kubinski.
National Lampoon's Vacation.
That would have been incorrect. That's
really?
Actually directed by Harold Ramis.
So only produced by John? Oh, no, he wrote it.
Wrote
right?
it, yeah.
Okay.
But Weird Science was also a John Hughes directed film.
Wow, that's right. It was, yeah.
Matt has 3 right. 3 out of 4. Last question over to you. Director of Halloween Kills, David Gordon Green, also directed Pineapple Express. Name the two leads in that film.
Seth Rogen and Franco.
There's two of those. You got to be more specific.
Well, I
Matt.
don't know what Franco. Are you talking about the Franco Mint?
Yeah, the Franco guy. I'll go James Franco.
That is correct. Wow. 4 out of 5, Matt K. At least I don't have to buy you a beer.
If I had not opened my big mouth, I would have had a perfect score this week.
Wow. That was impressive.
There you go. See? I guess I know my Jamie Lee Curtis. We did do a whole month on her once.
We did. So that's why I had to break it up and throw Anthony Michael Hall question in there.
Yeah, but I also know my John Hughes, man. This was right in my wheelhouse.
Indeed. Brings us to the end of a very fun Jaw. First and foremost, got to thank our engineer, our producer, Fill Me In Phil.
Oh, always happy to do it, guys. You know I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Matt, we should also thank the sponsors.
Hey, why not? Thanks to Overcast and thanks to the Chicago Podcast Co-op who help us get great sponsors like them.
We also want to thank you, the Jawheads, for listening. If you want to support the podcast, the easiest way to do so is by leaving us a review right where you're listening to this very podcast.
And we should mention Patreon. So if you're not a patron, check us out there as well. It helps support the show, and we drop all kinds of fun goodies there from time to time.
Indeed. Until next week, I'm Ryan, the movie guy.
I'm Matt K. And keep on John about the movies.
This is a warning. You have entered the Cinemajaw Spoiler Lounge. Plot details, character deaths, twist endings, and everything in between will be discussed. Only continue forward if you have seen the movie in discussion, or do not care if something is spoiled for you. Again, this is a warning.
Jawheads, we did decide to do a quick spoiler lounge on Halloween Kills. And this is very short, but Matt, you had mentioned while we were recording the main review, who was in Michael Myers' bedroom at the very end of the movie.
So you see a quick glimpse of a little girl in that famous red and white Harlequin clown costume. And that would be Jamie is the character's name, who is Michael Myers' niece, at least in the first movie. She was in Halloween 4 and 5, I believe, which are two of the better entries in all of the Michael Myers movies, because she sort of puts on the mask at the end of the first one that she's in and starts to get the Michael Myers curse. Anyway, I just don't know why they brought that character in. It's almost like universes colliding.
Just because they're going to keep making these movies. So just throw everything at us. And Peacock needs content.
I guess it was cool fan service, though. I noticed that, and it was something I wanted to ask you about. But obviously,
no, it completely went over my head. I am, like I said, I'm not into the Halloween stuff that much. So I was like, I don't know who this little girl is. I don't know what's going on. I just want to go home.
Anthony Michael Hall, folks. We totally forgot to talk about him. That was great.
All right, that's all we have for the spoiler lounge, right?
Yeah.
We can close it now.
Yeah,
let's end the show.